Good afternoon, class. Hope you're all well and healthy. So this is my first effort at a video little mini lecture to kind of talk about Pan's Labyrinth for just a second. So this is the film hopefully you've already watched. If you haven't, um, you should do so fairly soon because your first film reports will be due um, the Tuesday at midnight um, after spring break. So I'll post that information in the announcement section later, but just be aware. So my advice on this, since I'm not in class to kind of go over some things, first of all, read the assignment instructions. Those are on D2L under the assignments tab. One thing I want to caution you against is don't try to reply to everything that's in the prompt. What I've done with the assignment sheets is I've basically just put a bunch of ideas on there, a bunch of different questions, in hopes that one of those might seem interesting to you and you can take it up in depth. Or none of them, and you can do something completely different if you'd like, but don't try to answer everything, otherwise you won't be able to develop any of those ideas. So don't forget what you've learned in your other writing courses. Make sure you've got a thesis statement. Think of what we did with Gilgamesh and Oedipus Rex and so forth in our modeling exercises and how we did it there. And had one, like for example, Gilgamesh as a hero, or what this epic says about women and the status of women, or something like that. So find a focus. So hopefully you can find one in that prompt, but if not, find your own, because every film report is essentially the same. You're using critical and speculative analysis in order to um, interpret meaning and, more importantly, cultural significance or cultural hegemony. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, I recommend that you go through, that you read that prompt first before you watch it, and then you might scribble down some notes as you're watching. That could be helpful. A few things that you might be looking for. If you've already seen the movie, here are some things that might jar some ideas for you. Um, Eyes are are an important symbol in this film, and we've already seen at least one example of the significance of eyes in Oedipus Rex. Um, and it won't be the first time we see that mythological motif. So you might explore that idea. The task that Ophelia undertakes, that's another common mythological motif. Joseph Campbell could be useful there. The Christianity and Christian mythology, which is conflated in this film with Greek mythology, a little Norse mythology, and other things. That's significant. So along those same lines, Pan, the title in English is Pan's Labyrinth, but in Spanish it's El Laberinto del Fauna, which means the labyrinth of the faun. And so a faun is a little different than Pan. So Pan is a Greek god of the forest. He's similar. He has faun-like features, but he's a little different. So you might take note of that. Another thing you might take note of, if you look online for information about Pan's Labyrinth, you'll probably find something about Cronus and the Cronus complex. And I think that is useful in this film as well. Think about Cronus, if you remember, is the Greek god who eats his children because he fears they might do to him what he did to his dad Uranus, until Zeus and his mom collaborate to feed a rock in place of Zeus so that he vomits out the other gods, and Zeus can then conquer him. So that might be a theme too. Themes of consumerism are important in this film. And we could go on and on, but also, why, as the prompt says, why is it set after the Civil War? I think that's significant. We as viewers watch this film today knowing that it's already been decided. In interpreting cultural hegemony, remember the film was showed in theaters in 2007, 2008. So that's the time period we're interpreting. We're not interpreting the time period that's reflected in the film, which would be when the Spanish Civil War was taking place. So in other words, viewers watching this film would know that the efforts of those rebels to fight fascism um, were unsuccessful. A little historical background: it's during the Spanish Civil War. Basically, what had happened is that Spain, like most of Europe at the time, had become a republican government, a parliamentary republican government with democratic leadership and so forth, and a group of monarchists, people loyal to the kind of previous monarchy. Um, and they were all Catholic. So this was a movement that was supported by the Catholic Church. Um, they used General Franco to basically start a military coup that took over, um, took power from that Republican government. And then the Civil War was fought between that Republican government and then the fascists, who were Franco and his men. The Republican government included other sections such as communists, anarchists, and other groups that were kind of fighting against fascism all collectively in that. So that's maybe some historical background that might help as well. For this film, I've included two different student samples, and for the next one, I've also included a student sample. So I highly encourage you to look those over to get a feel for what this should look like, a good model for this first film report. Um, and as well as that, I've included an academic model, an example of a academic, a published academic journal article, and that's called "The Anti-Fascist Aesthetics of Pan's Labyrinth." So that will give you an idea of where we are headed with this skill set if we continue with your educational careers as a grad student or something. That's the kind of work I hope you'll be doing. So finally, I wanted to mention one other thing. I'm just curious if you could leave in the comments below this video, if you could leave your thoughts about whether you would prefer to videotape your presentations, and that would be a lot easier to discuss if it's possible, if students have the technology and so forth to do that. If you haven't done it before through YouTube, what you need to do is set up your own video channel. I know at least one of you has already done that, Duana. Hopefully your um, catering hasn't bombed out entirely with this virus. But anyway, if that's too difficult, don't worry. But leave a comment below telling me what you would prefer. If you'd prefer to videotape them, and then we can put comments below the videotape that you'll post the link in the discussions tab, or if you want to just submit your rough drafts, and then students would read your rough draft and give comments that way. And that's how the presentation points will be awarded. So that's what I discussed in class. But if you'd rather do it this way, I think that the line, how they've formatted the discussions in YouTube is a lot easier to work with than D2L. But let me know your thoughts on that. Okay. So again, I hope you're all healthy and doing well. Bear with me. This is uncharted territory for me as well as for you all. But let's just kind of keep in touch. Email me if you have any concerns, questions. Make sure you are using the correct email. Don't use that D2L one. If you do, I will respond, but that won't bounce back to me until 2 weeks later, at which point probably the response is no longer relevant anyway. So make sure you're using the email that's on the syllabus, and I think I posted it again on the announcements there. So make sure you're using that. Just let's stay in touch, and we'll do our best to get through the semester, hopefully having learned a thing or two. So thanks, and yeah, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are about how to do the presentations, and take care, everybody. Sorry for my video awkwardness. This is new to me as well.